All right, perfect. So, yeah, so I think we can really shake up the office staff, if you will. Like I said, I don't. My intention is not to is as I mentioned before. My intention is not to get rid of people. My whole aspect and goal here is to make it more efficient. So we have 6 sellers right now, and like I said, advertising. I definitely don't want to go down that route. But with the 6 sellers, I want to increase that by at least two. And we what I think that can happen is your brother, for example, he's more or less he's acting as the VP and office manager or office admin, if you will. We can move him and utilize his skills a little more efficiently and potentially get him compensated more with that commission structure that we want to improve and improve upon. Move him into a sales role, and then really coach up our receptionist because as I was mentioning before, or beginning to mention, based on my years of 25 experience on office sales offices as the size that we have there in Mexico City, a receptionist isn't really needed. The staff that's there can answer phone calls, can handle emails, can handle mail, things like that. Do a lot of the day to day that a receptionist would do. We really more or less move her into a very early on sales rep and coach her up or him up to essentially get to where we need to go. And like I said, we can discuss potentially adding her, keeping her at the same rate, and then obviously the commission will improve upon her incentive to learn the product, to learn the sales tactics, and go from there. So in that being said, like I mentioned before, potentially getting one of the trainers, move one of the trainers, maybe temporarily, but ideally, if for the time being, it'll be a permanent move into a sales rep as a sales role as well. And then as sales begin to increase, um, based on my um, based on my moves here, we can potentially redirect him back into training. But for the time being, we need more sellers. We need more people on the ground pushing the product, pushing the sales. So in that event, we get to that 3 additional sellers that I my goal and my that kind of what I was looking for from a sales staff perspective, without really getting rid of anybody in that office. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, again, I have some people, 3 new sellers that I think would be fine. I don't think we need to add any more sellers there. As for the office position, the receptionist gives a nice professional um, feel to the office when people call in. I mean, that's something that people down here in Mexico like to have, is that professional feel when somebody's calling in. So I think that she's fine where she's at. She does a lot of stuff behind the scenes, helping with the salespeople. That's the same thing with my brother Jose. He's put a lot into this himself, and I think his position he's in now, there's a lot behind the scenes that they both do to help with the sellers and with the sales. Um, that's why we have the commission structure the way we have it,
So
because it's a team atmosphere down here. Is way we are down here.
sure. No, I understand that. But again, I understand the culture that you had down there in Mexico, but essentially my goal here is to increase our profits, right? Increase our numbers. I like I mentioned before, the sellers, I understand the personal touch, the professional aspect of a receptionist being there, but in an ideal state, we don't have many people coming into the office. And if we do, the sellers will be the first person there to greet that individual, or to answer that phone call. So I really think we should really look into potentially moving that receptionist into a sales role, or quite frankly, getting rid of them, because we need to, and to overall commission structure for that sales staff, we're basically, the way it's set up today is incentivizing, or I would say incentivizing, is promoting um, poor work by some of the sellers, because right now the way it looks based on the numbers that we see here, we have two sales reps that are just completely crushing it out there, that doing everything we ask, bringing in all majority of the business, and then we have those at the bottom that are reaping the benefits of that commission pool. So it's not incentivizing them by any means to go out there and sell. They're just reaping the benefits of those that are doing great at the top. So I think we really need to, in both aspects, really look into swallowing kind of what we're doing today and moving towards that efficiency. Because, like I said, if we don't change anything, then we're going to continue on that downward trajectory here, and we're gonna fail as a company. So again, my recommendation is based on everything that I've done in my past and what I've had success with is not getting rid of anyone. Like I said, I don't want to get rid of anyone, and really utilizing and teaching new skills to maximize our numbers and our efficiency down there, and incentivizing our staff to sell more, and really making sure that your commission structure is based on how well you do. So that means, if that means we need to learn the product a little more, we need to learn a little more different sales tactics, I'm sorry, then we need to do that, right? Because essentially in the sales game, if you're not hustling, then you're not selling, you're not making money. And I want to get rid of the culture and mentality that, hey, it's okay if I'm not doing well, I'm still going to make my money, right? We need to sell and to make money, and we need to be incentivized by that. So again, didn't mean to get on a tangent there, but I really want to have you strongly consider moving the receptionist to a sales role early on, moving one of the trainers to a sales staff to up our numbers, because right now we're at 6. I want to get to 9. Receptionist, that's 7. Trainer, that's 8. And potentially your brother moving into a sales, maybe rename it to a sales vice president role, vice president or director of sales, where he's still in the hand of selling. He gets his commission based on something that he sells, or he has his hand in the sale. That way he doesn't lose money. He still has a very important role in the company, without having to really cut anybody, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that might be a later discussion. I agree with some things that I think some things need to change. And I have some ideas myself, especially on the commission. I would like to change the commission structure with you, but I would like to do it more on a sales volume and not on a dollar figure.
Sure.
And that's one thing I would like to do. I would also like to maybe try to incentivize by getting more commission for the guys. Increasing the commission. I'd like an additional 10% if we could get up that high for the sales staff. Something that would increase and help to motivate them. I don't know that I necessarily agree with the increase of the sales staff. I still feel that advertising is something that will help out far more than increasing the sales staff. But also something to look at is with the economy down here and the peso is possibly looking at some discounts. Currently we can discount up to 10%. I'd like to go up to 25% if possible to increase those sales. I mean, what do you think of that? Not so much off the peso, but off the list $100 US list price. Not that we would use it every time, but I would like to be able to say, hey, we have this opportunity to close some of these sales with a better discount.
Right. And I don't know, quite frankly, if I want to go down the discount road. And quite frankly, if there is something that we can potentially do with the discount, right? So I'm not going to throw that out the table. So again, can you just review it? You kind of cut in and out a little bit. I apologize. Kind of review again what you're wanting to do with that discount again. I apologize. I want to make sure I understand that clearly.
Sure. So currently, our discount rate is up to 10%. And it's I would like to take that up to as high as 25% if need be. At least till the economy turns around and the peso becomes stronger to the dollar. But in the interim, I'd like to turn it so we can go up to 25% off if need to, but off the U.S. list price, not off the Mexican peso price. Does that make sense? So the list price of $100, I would love to take it off that, not off the peso price.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So the 25%, that's something we can potentially work with. I definitely don't want to do that from a permanent standpoint. It can be an early on just to get kind of sales moving a little bit, and then more or less cut it back to at nothing more than a 15% discount. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. So you don't want to go any higher than 15%. You want to go up to 25%.
We can't. Now, I don't want to say I don't want to do 25%, right? If we do offer that 25% discount, it's for a limited time only, right? To really say incentivize our potential prospects. Hey, it's only 25% for 4 months. Okay, for the next 4 months or the next, we don't have to put a number on that, but for a very limited time, we are offering a 25% discount on our products. And
Well,
and
what if it wasn't something we necessarily threw out there, but that the sales staff knew? And I just really want to, if we can get it at least till the peso gets back to its normal levels. Maybe it's 6 months, 8 months down the road, but it's not something we're advertising. It's something that's out there. So when the sales staff's out there selling, if they have to go to the discount rate, they know what they can go up to.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I said, I don't want to offer it for a full-time basis, more or less. We
Sure.
don't have to define that number today as far as what that limited time looks like. But ideally, the 25% is not going to be a standstill discount moving forward. It's just going to be from a limited time until sales begin to pick up, until hopefully the peso comes down to its normal value. So yeah, 25% at a limited time, I'm okay with. But when it comes down to once we decide on what that duration looks like, I definitely don't want to get above a 15% discount for from a limit perspective.
I want to go back for a second, back to the commission, because I really don't want to change the commission pool we have. We have a team atmosphere down here. The sales staff does get a higher percentage than the office staff. That's a common cultural aspect down here in Mexico. That's how a lot of businesses are run down here. And we'd like to keep that teamwork and that team mentality down here.
So you keep mentioning a team mentality, right? So can you kind of discuss how more or less the sales operations goes in the day-to-day? So let's say I'm a prospect, right? Or I'm a potential client. Are you individually going out there and selling as a salesperson?
Yeah, the sales piece will go out there behind this. It will help to facilitate the sale. The behind the scenes, the people help to close the sale where needed.
What, if you don't mind, like what is that behind the scenes if needed? What does that look like?
Paperwork, helping with any kind of monetary issues, anything like that. Getting any information, helping with training. We do have a training. The one thing that differentiates us from some of the other products in the market is we offer the training courses.
Sure.
So they help with the training courses, putting those together, things of that nature.
Okay.
Where it's not so much on the salesman to get all that together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm really having a tough time. I really don't think. I mean, we could right now. It's a 9%. It's within the pool. The company president, the VP, the sellers, and the trainers get 9% of that pool, and the finance person, the receptionist get that 5%, get the additional 5%. And quite frankly, like I said, that's everybody. So if I'm a seller and I sell it, let's say, and again, I don't have the product numbers in front of me, but let's say $100,000 is an absolute amazing deal. It's one of the best deals we've had in months, right? So I don't, and me personally, I don't reap the benefits of that compared to you or Joe over there that hasn't made a sale in 3 weeks. He gets the same benefit that I get, that when I put in all the work to make that deal. And quite frankly, the way that right now that's not working. And I know it is, maybe the economy has done a lot for that, but I want, if I'm putting majority of the work in on the sales aspect of it and I close that deal and I'm the main seller, I should be getting the benefit. And that's the kind of culture I want. I don't want to say, hey, I don't need your help. If I need your help, sure, we can work out a deal there. But I think that the main seller, the salespeople, should reap the most benefits of that commission and be incentivized to sell more deals, because the way it's working right now, I have no incentive to go out there. I'm getting paid just as much as he is, and he's putting in all the work. I'm sitting on my butt. So I mean, I don't want to. I want to rid that culture.
On the flip side, when I sell more and he sells less, he also reaps the benefits from my sales.
Okay, I understand that. It's one company, it's one team, but the way successful sales organizations work here, and this includes in Mexico as well, and mainly in the U.S. because that's where a lot of my expertise is coming from. The sellers that are incentivized the most to make those sales work the hardest and reap those benefits. Yeah, of course, it's the nature of the business. You're going to have some down months. You're going to have some great months. It's just it's the nature of sales. You get into that industry, you're going to have those up and downs. But again, you have those downs. It incentivizes you to work harder to make more money. So again, we definitely we adjusting that and commission structure is a definite must in my opinion.
Well, Mr. Morgan, that may work up in the United States, but it doesn't work down here in Mexico.
Well, it's definitely not working right now, quite frankly.
Well, I think with the increased advertisements, we would see sales come back. We are up over last quarter's same numbers. We're just down for the year.
The overall trajectory of the year is we're gonna finish well under our sales numbers, and essentially I'm trying to cut back expenses as much as possible and increase our revenues, and I think adding that revenue expense is not, or I'm sorry, advertisement expense is not a guarantee that we're going to make any money back. And increasing their sales, we get in front of more people, physical people, where we can't guarantee who hears, who sees our advertisements.
That may be a discussion for another time, I guess.
Okay. So the other thing that I want to talk through is the last thing that we need to talk through before we really come to terms here is the overall labor in the Guadalajara location for the overall line of work, right? So basically, when it was discussed, or looking at some of the notes that I have from Andy or Alan, I'm sorry, I apologize there. We have enough money, and again, I want to make sure that I have here. We only have 5 people budgeted for that sales staff, right? Or I'm sorry, the line staff. And right now there's 7 employees on the payroll. Can you just kind of go into any details as far as why we have 2 additional that weren't budgeted on the payroll?
Well, there are some issues with people not showing up at work, and some of that has to do with transportation. Very few people in Mexico have cars. So it is difficult for people to get here, and it does cost quite a bit for public transportation. You know, one of the things I discussed and had asked for was a transportation allowance to help pay for some of that to get people there. Alan disagreed and did not approve of this, but I mean, it's common practice down here in Mexico for people in their jobs to get a transportation allowance to get to work. And also, I would like another thing I discussed with Alan was to see about offering a small bonus to employees. I think for people that show up, for not skipping a day of work, I think if we can do that, we can get down to a staff that is adequate for the facility, and we probably won't have to have the additional people on the payroll. But currently, we do, just simply because we have people who have transportation issues and aren't able to get to work all the time.
Okay. With that, we can definitely discuss that transportation further. Obviously, I wasn't there when that was discussed with Alan. I'm hesitant because it is an additional expense that we don't have the money to spend. But one thing I definitely want to discuss potentially implementing here is more or less a points and incidents or attendance policy. I understand that there are some challenges for your employees to get there, but really the way that we've seen this work in the past is more or less putting a point system together and more or less tracking who's showing up and who's not showing up. I know you mentioned a bonus for people for not showing up to work. Well, they should be showing up to work. It's what we pay them to do. And obviously we can have some circumstances built into this attendance policy to say, hey, if you can't get to work, you don't have transportation, sure, we can add some leniency to that. But I think implementing an absentee policy or attendance policy, points, however you want to name that. We need to implement something that really forces, I would say forces our employees to go to work, because essentially that's what we pay them for, but really makes a point that says, hey, if you don't come to work, then you have 3 strikes essentially, or you're done. With that type of work, it's not an overly skilled position. We can get people in the building to do that type of work.
And I would agree, it's not a very skilled position. Again, I think the bonus is not so much that, you're right, we pay people to come to work and they need to come to work, but I think to help curb that attendance issue, if we did offer a small bonus for people that do show up on a regular basis and don't skip work, that would help with there. But again, I think, if we start cutting and slashing people, and the word gets out, we're going to have a hard time staffing down there if you start cutting people out, so that's something we can definitely talk about, but we need to make sure that we are doing everything we can to make sure the employees are getting there.
Okay. Okay. But quite frankly, we don't have the budget, quite frankly, for 7 people. So we're going to have to, I understand we don't want to cut people, but it's the nature of the business. We're going to have to, for the labor expenses. I'm cool with doing the bonuses. I really am. I think that's a great incentive there. If you come to work for you're scheduled 5 days a week, if you work a whole month straight without missing a day, sure, let's give you a bonus, right? But we're going to have to at least get rid of 1 person down from 7 to 6. It's just the way it is. It's unfortunate. I hate to do it, but from management that I report to, that's what I've been given as a one thing that we cannot be leaning on. We have to get at least rid of 1 person in our staff in Guadalajara.
I can understand, and I think we can make do with what we have if we have to get rid of 1 person.
Okay. So we go down from 7 to 6. We implement that absentee policy. Again, we don't have to get to the nuts and bolts of it, but essentially, if you miss a day, it's a point. And we can use a 3 strikes you're out kind of analogy there. But again, I think the way with the struggles we have there, with some of the transportation, we can definitely incentivize that. So let's say let's at a high level, let's use a month, for example. As I mentioned, if you come to work every single day you're scheduled to work for that entire month, you get a little kick at the end of the month on that paycheck.
Okay.
So 7 down to 6 for the Guadalajara staff. And then points or we'll call it an attendance policy that pushes them to get to work as they should, right? And then monthly, we'll just call it a monthly attendance bonus. Sound good?
Yep.
We're making some waves here.
Getting there.
Making some waves. All right. So it's good that we have that Guadalajara down there, right? So we got that piece. I think that's a good move for both parties. And again, I hate to get rid of people, but it's just the nature of the business. So you have to make some very difficult decisions at times. But it's good that we have that all taken care of there, and we can move on and focus on the Mexico City operation. So again, kind of where we left off with that, and I know we might be coming up on time here. So we need to talk about the staffing. We need to firm that up. We need to firm up the commission structure. So again, going back to the staff, kind of what I was proposing is not getting rid of any 1 person in that staff, because like I said, I don't want to cut people if I don't have to. I want to really repurpose them, if that makes sense. So again, receptionist into sales, moving 1 trainer for the time being into sales until sales start to ramp up, as we hope, and move them back into and transition back into their training role, and then repurposing your brother, if you will, keeping him the VP status, but also making him more or less the director of sales. So he oversees, he has his hand in every single sale, if needed to. Especially the major ones, where he can help close that and being that face for the company on this sales train. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
So what are your thoughts on doing that? Like I said, we're not getting rid of a single person there. We're just repurposing how we utilize them to maximize efficiency.
I mean, if we're utilizing people, I can understand that. I just don't think we need any additional staff down there. Additional staff, I think, is just something that's going to be an added expense that we don't need.
Sure.
And we could put those dollars into advertising. And I think if, I know you want to increase the sales staff, but I think if we can get away from that and put some money in advertising, I think we will reap the benefits.
Sure. And again, I'm not. We are increasing our sales staff, but we're not adding any new salaries. We're not bringing in new people. We're repurposing our staff that's already down there. So again, we're moving from 6 sellers to 9, but we're ridding of the quote unquote receptionist. They're moving into a sales an elementary sales role. We're moving one of our trainers for the time being into sales, and then your brother will be the director of sales, and he will have his hand in making his own sales also as well. He will be incentivized to make his sales on his own while reaping while having his being the face of the company on the sales road.
Okay.
All right. So what are your thoughts on that?
Again, if we're not adding staff, I'm okay with repurposing people for the time being, and then as things increase and get back to normal, we can look at possibly increasing staff and putting people back maybe where they were, if need be.
Okay, perfect. So again, just making some notes here to make sure that I have this down right. Trainer to sales, because the one thing I like about moving that trainer to sales, he knows the product. He or she knows the product like the back of their hand. We won't have to train them on it. That they know everything, to know how to best utilize it. And he can more or less, he or she can more or less throw to our prospect and be like, hey, this is the best way to use it, right? This is how I think you can maximize your efficiency by using it this way. Some of our clients use it this way. We can do it this way, more or less. So I just think that makes the most sense from a budget perspective, and overall from an overall moving them to repurpose their experience. And then your brother is going to VP we'll go vice president and director of sales. So that's great there. And then last thing that we have to firm up, again, correct me if I'm wrong there, though, that we discussed is the commission structure, correct?
Yeah, and again, I would love to leave it the way it is, and I kind of want to change the commission off of the dollar figure and really focus on more of a sales volume, not so much dollar figure. So whether you sell $100,000 or 50,000 units versus $100,000 or 25,000, I'd rather switch it over to more of a unit based, not a sales dollar based commission.
Okay. So
just go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
I really want to leave the commission pool the way it is.
So you want to leave it at the 9% for the upper management and sales and training team, and then you want to leave it at the 5%. So that being said, we're going to have to modify it in some way. We're going to have to. And the reason for that is, I'm not trying to be pushy here. The reason for that is we're repurposing our staff. So that means we need to repurpose our commission pool, because the receptionist before was getting 5%. We don't have a receptionist anymore, right? So we need to modify those numbers in any way, and I definitely want to incentivize everybody. So keeping that team atmosphere, but quite frankly, the finance person, they don't really have their hand in a sale, right? I want and the president, of course, it's his company, or it's your company, I should say. So we need to make sure that you're getting your money. But right now it's at a 14% pool. It's a 9%, 5% split there. We definitely need to go based on a sales volume per se, but I definitely want to place heavier emphasis on sales for the sellers, right? I want to incentivize them more. So what I'm thinking from a commission structure, we keep it at the 14% total, and I'm just kind of writing some things down as I talk through this here. So we have a 14% bucket. let's say that um, we have an 8% commission for the sellers, right? And again, it's based on a sales volume. It's not necessarily a it is a pool, but it's all based on sales volume. So let's go 8% goes to the sellers here. Then we got, let's go 4% to the president, and then 2% to the finance. Because quite frankly, they don't have the finance person is making sure everything is, they're basically keeping the books. They're keeping the accounting, making sure that everything is accounted for, right? They don't have their hand in the sale. They might sign off on something at the very end of the sale, but they're not the one pushing the deals. They have no role in that except for maybe signing off at the very end. So I don't think they should be getting the same amount of money as, or getting the larger pool. If you want to give them money, sure, that's the way it's worked. But we need to make sure that we repurpose that money.
You know, local laws require us to share profits down here. I don't know if you're aware of that, and it's tied to the amount in the office. So there might be a situation where we got to pay more than 2%. So I think if we just leave the structure the way it is with the 9 and 5, we're safe there.
I'm really having a hard time getting away from. Like, I feel like keeping the pool, because originally, as I mentioned, I wanted to mainly the sales reps get majority, if not all, of that commission base. So I feel like that I'm being relatively flexible here in allowing
But you're
that.
giving the salesman less. You're giving them 8% versus 9%, which is what they're getting. So if we kept it the way it was, the sellers would get 9%, and the office staff would get 5%. So they're being incentivized less in your scenario.
Okay. You are right with the pool thing, so I apologize there. It's been a long day at the office, been a long day of travel. It's hot, and I apologize there. You got me. And I'm not trying to rid anybody of money by any stretch of the imagination. So let me take a step back here with the commission structure. So again, basic majority of the U.S. practices, and again, I know I'm referring to what's happening in the States, and I know it's a little bit differently down there in Mexico, but the way that the best sales organizations work is they incentivize, as I keep mentioning, their sellers. From top to bottom, we need to make sure that, hey, if I'm making a sale, I need to be motivated to make more money, because if I'm in sales, I'm there to make money. I don't want a day-to-day desk job, because I can make the most money getting out there, and the harder I work. So, and you can understand that, and you can appreciate that if you work the hardest, you should reap the benefits of that. You should make the most money, because essentially you wouldn't get where you are today at your young of age by not working hard, right? So I know I'm kind of taking a complete 180 here, but I definitely think that we need to go back to my original thoughts before I had a little heat stroke there, and more or less work towards incentivizing your sales by, hey, you make the best. You're based on sales volume, your own sales volume, but not the entire office's sales volume, if that makes sense.
Well, it does. I mean, like I said, local laws on here require us to share profits. So
What exactly is that law? Is there a number tied to that?
there is. It's based off the amount that they make. So I unfortunately don't have those numbers with me right now, but so
What do you?
it's difficult really for us to. It's the easiest way for us to keep legal and make sure everybody's sharing. But again, it doesn't. It also doesn't pit one salesman against the other salesman. Again, it's a team. It's a team mentality down here, and that's everybody. It's working. It works great down here, and people enjoy it. So again, it may work in the United States where one person reaps all the benefits and somebody doesn't, but somebody's always losing and somebody's winning in that scenario. And eventually whoever's going to be winning, if you keep replacing those people, eventually somebody's going to be at the bottom, and it's a constant replacing of that person.
Right, it makes sense. I still think we need to modify this in some capacity. So you said that you don't have those actual, because I don't want to break any laws, right? That's the last thing I want to do. I don't want legal down there on you guys,
I do
but
not have that with me, no. I don't know what it is offhand. I would have to, that'd be something I'd have to look into
sure.
and we look at down the road.
And you mentioned it's based on volume, right? Or based on total amount. Is that per office?
No amount of, it's an individual's pay it's based off a pay amount.
So based on their salary?
Yeah.
So if they make $40,000,
It's easiest way to share. And again, everybody reaps the benefits of the company's success and failures, and we all share in that. So if it incentivizes everybody still to do good. I mean, if I'm doing good this month and you're doing bad, you still benefit from that. If you're doing good next month and I'm doing bad, I benefit from that, but you do too as well. So even in the lean months when you may not have some leads, and I do, you still benefit from the leads that I have. And yeah, maybe there are some staff that is that are not as good as other salespeople, and that could be a simple retraining or some additional training that may need to take place with that sales staff to get them up to speed. But I think that keeping it the way it is the best way to share it amongst the employees. We all benefit from it. We all rise and fall with it, but we all stay together. It helps keep employees here, and they're not leaving as well. So this is a very tight market. It's a very difficult industry to hire people in. It takes a while to train them. So it's competitive. So, if we lose one of our salespeople to somebody else, it takes a while to train that staff to get up to speed. So that's definitely something we don't want to do.
right? So again, I apologize. I'm not familiar with the laws down there, quite frankly, but just want to reiterate again to make sure I completely understand this, that the way the commission works from a law perspective is it's everybody in the office has to get a piece of the pie. Does that make sense? Or am I? So
Yes,
okay. So there's no leniency on incentivizing individual sales and reaping the benefits from your individual sales.
Well, I mean, if you want to increase for individual sales volumes, that's something you could look at doing. Yes. From a company standpoint, if that's something that you felt that would motivate people. I mean, you could possibly do an individual bonus or something like that to salespeople.
Right. And that's kind of where I was getting at. And maybe I was I would say missaying, but not articulating it the right way. That's what I want to do. That I want to have an individual commission structure where you are incentivized. If I make $100,000 sale, then I get a percentage off of that, and then we can also still have our pool, right? But where everybody gets benefit on the total dollars that we sell or total volume that we sell. But I want to implement a commission structure where it's incentivizing our sellers individually, and we can also, since per law, we can also have a pool, and it might not be 14%, but it incentivize a pool to where, hey, we can definitely abide by the profit sharing laws down there, and still have everyone falling and rising with the ways of the company.
Yeah, I don't know why we just can't keep the percentages where they're at 9 and 5, and you guys can we can discuss a additional, if you would say, bonus or however you want to say it, to incentivize additional sales. But this way, it's the best of both worlds. The company is growing, the employees grow with it, and then as they increase sales, they're getting more for what they're doing. But I would love to keep it just the way it is. And if there's an incentivization you can add into there, that would be great.
Well, we can't add any additional dollars for commission that we already have in there. It's just not in the budget, and the way that the structure is working today, like I said, especially with us increasing, or I would say increase. Well, we are increasing our sales staff, but purposing our staff today to increase those amount of sellers. They're not incentivized to make any sales. We're not saying, hey, you're moving to sales, your salary's staying the same. But yeah, you're reaping the benefits of the two people up top. It's not working is what I'm kind of trying to get at, and kind of why I'm down here for the most part is cutting costs for the most part and repurposing our costs and our expenses and trying to do all I can to incentivize our individuals to work harder and make more sales. So
You're not wanting to increase commissions at all. Commission percentages is what I'm saying.
we can't right now. No, there's no way we can increase that commission percentage.
Are you willing to go? Are you willing to relook at it and go off of volume versus sales dollars, or are you strictly stuck with the sales dollars? Is that what you want to go with?
No, I'm cool with moving towards the sales volume right now. I'm definitely okay with moving towards that. I just think that the way the structure from a percentage standpoint and overall everyone getting the same amount no matter how much they work from a sales standpoint, I don't think that's a healthy environment to in a competitive environment to implement and continue moving because like I said, the sales are on a downward trajectory here. We're not making money, we're not making more sales, and we're not incentivizing those people on the bottom to improve their work practices to increase their numbers for the better of the company. So I think if we incentivize the people at the bottom to continue to work harder, that will bring in more money. That will pay people more in the company.
So, one thing, and I don't want to have to bring this up, but, one of the things in our joint venture agreement is that I have with the U.S. is is a buyout clause. What would that structure? What would that look like monetary? Do you know?
I don't have the I know that's part of the clause as well. I don't have those monetary numbers in front of me, but that of course that is part of the joint venture here that we have. That after the 1 year anniversary, which is only 4 months away, there is that option to have that buyout. Of course, I don't want to go down that route if we don't have to. Like I said, I don't want to. I want to continue this relationship and utilizing your expertise down there and seeing what we can do to continue this and really riding the ship per se. So it is an option. I really don't want to go down that route, but yeah, I mean, if we can't make any moves on incentivizing some of this staff and commission, I'm not saying that it's end all be all, but I definitely think that's one of the main areas outside of some of the staff things that we've modified and implemented some of the points policies. That's one of the things that I think is going to really increase our numbers, increase motivation within the company to bring more dollars. And again, we can keep in some capacity that pool where everyone is that profit sharing. But if we incentivize our individual sellers to work harder, that will bring in more money. And even if we keep it at, let's say it is a 5% or 7%, whatever that percentage is, the more sales we make, the more volume that's there, the more money that everyone is distributed. So that's one way you got to look at that as well.
Well, Mr. Morgan, I think we're very short on time now, and I've got another meeting to get to, so this might be a discussion we need to revisit here shortly.
All right. So how much? I have a few minutes. I don't have a hard stop. I mean, I have about 5 minutes here before we have to get off, I believe. So you're saying you're not willing to discuss that sales commission any longer?
Well, I'd like to go off of again, to repurpose it into more of a sales volume versus
which I'm okay with.
Again, I want to keep it as the pool. I'd like to increase the commission. The things I really want are to increase the commission for the staff. Additional advertising dollars, which I discussed with Alan a long time ago, and we never got around to doing. And he didn't seem to want to do that either. But so increasing the sales, or increasing the advertising budget to get some additional advertising, something I would really like to do as well. But I don't know that we're going to get to there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm willing to do the pool, but the last thing that I'm willing to do with the commission is we have 14%, we have 9% across the board. I think we utilize the let's keep it. We're gonna move to a 7% pool. This is kind of like my final offer here. So the 7% is the pool for everybody. Everyone pulls from that pool at the end of the quarter, whatever that timing is. The remaining 7% is to the individual sellers themselves. The sellers, your brother, they will get everything else from and reaping the benefits of that. So that is for an individual basis. So we have a 7% pool that everybody will pull from. So that's an increase for the finance person. And again, the sellers will still get some of that pool, depending on the overall volume, but they're incentivized themselves as salespeople to, with a 7% commission, if you will, individually to make individual sales and increase your sales. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that?
So 7% for the pool for everybody, even across the board, and 7% for the seller.
Mm-hmm.
So the seller's getting 14%? Or the seller's getting... Explain that again. So the seller gets 7 plus an additional 7?
So I did misspeak there. So the sellers themselves, again, that's why we're working on this together, right? You're calling out something that from an overall standpoint, we can't be giving everyone 14% there from a sales perspective. So this is what I'm proposing. Again, I know I keep going around the ball here, and we're short on time, so I'm kind of going off the hip here. But let's say that 9% pool, that's just for the sellers themselves. Okay, we'll keep the 14.95 structure, but the sellers themselves will only get 9. That is for their individual basis. They are incentivized to go there, right? And then the 5% will remain for the finance people, and that they get the benefits there. So that 9% is not a pool for everybody. That 9% is individual sellers getting their piece of the pie.
So if the sales doesn't, if you don't make a sale, you get no money, essentially is what you're saying.
More or less, yes.
Yeah, I just I don't like that structure. You know.
Are you willing to offer, because we got to get off the 9.5 share from an overall pool perspective? What do you have from an overall modification to that 9.5 structure then?
Well, I don't really have anything on the 9.5 structure. I kind of like to leave it the way it is. I think it's working great the way it is. I don't see a reason to change it. You know, I mean, it's worked. It worked for so long. It's worked fine. I really don't believe that the drop in sales has anything to do with the commission pool, as it does have to do with the economy, unfortunately, at this point. So you know, not to beat a dead horse, but I think keeping that structure the way it is, I really don't want to change that structure. I would like to leave it the way it is.
I just don't think we can do that, and quite frankly, that might be a sticking point on the overall deal, and we might have to, unfortunately, go down the route of potential buyout here in a few months. And the way that we can go about this deal, then, if you want to keep that 9.5 structure, okay, fine. But if our sales don't increase tremendously, and I don't have a number on there, we might have to visit that buyout at the end of this 4 months.
Okay. I would not something I want to do, but if it's that's something we have to discuss, that's what we can do.
Okay, so the way that so some of the changes that we have agreed to here, we will make the no, where did I put my paper here? I apologize. So the Guadalajara, we're going from 7 down to 6.
Yes.
We're implementing the attendance policy and the monthly attendance bonus. We are repurposing our staff here in Mexico City. Reception's going to sales, one trainer's going to sales, and your brother is moving to sales in a director of sales role while keeping his VP title. And there's a contingency that we are going to keep that commission structure the way it is, right? Where everyone gets from that 9% pool from a sales perspective, regardless of how they do. And the finance person will get that 5% cut. And if we don't increase sales in the next 4 months, then we will initiate that buyout.
Okay.
All right.
That sounds like it's a plan.
And one caveat to that, at the end of 4 months, if one thing that we can do as a contingency if you don't want to visit that, if we don't want to go down that buyout route, which I think we're going to have to, is we're going to have to go to an individual commission structure.
After the 4 months you're talking about?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
All right.
Sounds good.
That works.
All right. Well, thanks, Louise. I appreciate it. And like I said, I hope this would have went a little better from the commission standpoint, but we're continuing this relationship. I want to continue being in your corner and your team's corner down there, and you have a great operation, and we're gonna do all we can to keep this relationship going, even well in ways past this next 4 months.
All right, Mr. Morgan.
Yep.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Stop recording.
Mm-hmm.
All right.